Okay.
Bryce, start your intro.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 14th episode of the third season of Second Sons. As always, I am Roy Rogers, formerly the New York City Meta, currently of the Philadelphia Meta. My fiance is currently watching Australian crime television in our apartment. A great way to pass the time. And I'm joined by almost our full cast of Second Sons today. Sandy, I'm super thirsty Barnabas couldn't join us tonight, but we do have Aaron Glazer, who does not get to speak during this segment, and the champion of my heart and giver of one of my favorite gifts of all time, Chris Schoenthal. How you doing, Chris?
Doing well, thank you. As Jesse would say, my heart is full from hanging out with all you nerds, except Sid and Buzz, I guess. All of you nerds out in podcast land for the last few days, and I didn't really want to come back to real life, but here we are.
I hear you, my friend. I hear you, but sadly, all good things must come to an end. But speaking of someone who missed out on good things, Sid, I have a porn to record in the morning. Is here
episode.
Yeah, right after the episode, he's fluffing himself. This episode is just his fluffer.
It's the rapidly, I think, descending sun that's causing this change in light.
All right. It's black and white, just like life is just coming up pornography for Sid. All right.
That's what we should name our last episode, The Setting Sons.
Ooh, that's not bad.
That's a good one. We got to save that one.
Life is great. I definitely missed everybody in GenCon. I do not suffer from FOMO, but I was excited for everybody, and I do like to kind of vicariously enjoy the weekend with people who are there by, following along with things like Chris's commentary and some of the other posts that were up on social media during the event, like the Second Sons Instagram feed. Thank you, Sandy Barnabas. Looks like everybody had a blast.
Yeah, it was a very good time. Our technical maven and token European Buzz Aldrin is with us today as well. How you doing today, Buzz?
Good as always.
Always so happy to have you. And we are joined for the first time by Chris Vac, probably the best player in New Jersey. Fresh off his...
No, the best player in the whole Northeast.
Best player in the whole Northeast.
Malucci's
Wow,
done.
Aaron is feeling...
Maybe.
Going 4-2 at a tournament has made Glazer generous again.
I wasn't kidding.
Chris, were you in the top 16 or top 8 this weekend?
Neither. I got booted the first round
Got
because of
him.
pairing shenanigans. I'm going to count it as a loss because of Glazer leaving early. Otherwise, I would have had a favorable matchup. Thank you very much.
All right, well, we are happy to have you. And we are going to be talking a lot about GenCon tonight. Tonight is our post-GenCon special, which is one of my favorite traditions that we have here on the Second Sons. But before we do that, we have something really important that we need to talk about first, which is, for those of you who do not know, my good, close personal friend, we'll get into this later, teammate on the Long Lances, friend of the show, frequent guest host, Jesse Carpenter has had a relapse in his cancer, which he found out about shortly before GenCon. He's hopefully going to be starting treatment soon, but cancer. Look, unlike Buzz, we don't live here in a socialist paradise. Medical treatment in the United States is very expensive, and to sort of help Jesse and help his family in a time of need, Alex Black, Alejandro, and Sandy have put together a GoFundMe for Jesse, which I think Sid has just put in the Twitch chat, and I will have in the podcast notes, and I'm sure Buzz can put in the description on YouTube for those of you who are not watching us live. And please, if you have time, please donate. If time and money, please donate to Jesse's GoFundMe. It will be a huge help for him and his family, for somebody who has given so much to this community over only a year. For those of us who know Jesse well, it cannot feel like it has only been a year that he's been part of our Thrones family, but it was literally this past week, just a year since Jesse was part of the Thrones community. But in that short period of time, I think he's made one of the biggest impacts of any player in the world. on both sides of the pond. He's friends with almost everyone. And hopefully we can give back to him. And also an anonymous member of the Thrones family has agreed to match all the GoFundMe donations that are made. So if we can run this up, we can get another very generous member of the Thrones family to also give a huge amount to help Jesse and his family in this time of need. So really, again, I just want to sort of hammer home to all you Second Sons fans out there in the Thrones world to please, if you have the time and if you have the money to give something to Jesse and to share it with your friends and family as well on the various social medias such as Facebook, Twitter, even Google Plus.
Which is that an old Two Champs and a Chump callback?
It is an old Two Champs and a Chump callback. I would appreciate. There we go.
Probably still some lurkers there that'll help out.
But it's a little bit of a somber note to begin the show on, but I really wanted to get that out front and center. And I want to just say, as someone who considers Jesse a really great friend, that I appreciate all the effort that Alex, Black, and Alejandro and Sandy have put into getting this off the ground like that. So again, check the Twitch chat, donate your monies, and yeah. Do you guys have anything you want to say real quick, or should we move on?
Just that if you've experienced any hospitality from Jesse, like this is an opportunity to really pay it forward to him. I know he'll love everyone here who if you don't give, but I'll love you more if you do. So please do it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot left to say, but the entire community loves Jesse to death, and he loves us, and we want nothing but the best for him, and we know he's going to fight through this, and so I know you're out there watching, buddy. We love you. We'll get through this together, and everybody give him your dollars. I'll be sharing as soon as the show is over and my computer is returned to its normal working state.
There we go. I'll be sharing it as well. All right. So let's just jump. Let's jump into this and kick off the GenCon episode. So I want to first congratulate Tyler Phillips, who piloted Martell Wars, beating me in the top 16 in a really interactive game, where my deck took a shit on itself. Piloting Martell Wars very wisely through the whole weekend to take down the Joust. And our very own friend of the show, my White Book co-host and Aaron's White Book co-host, Scott Levine, took down the Melee, smashing through people with a home brew of his own. And the last sort of beginning this off shout out is to Ryan Ritter, who FFG employee, friend of the show, who was put in charge of GenCon this year. For a long time, Second Sons fans will know kicking FFG OP around is kind of what the show was founded to do. I believe the post-GenCon episode last year was described as like a circle jerk of negativity. Where
it's in the original charter. Yeah,
it is in the original charter.
That's the actual title of the episode, right?
It was real bad. We were even kicking them around in the very exciting year when we had Chris on to win. His win was also almost shadowed by OP mistakes that year. It warms my heart. It fills my heart, to quote Jesse, gift to the GoFundMe, is that Ryan did such an excellent job this year running it. It was run really smoothly. There were some minimal issues running the event. Well, for example, some idiot who may or may not be me forgot to put Rose Gardens on his deck list because he was writing it so fast because he had to register at the last minute. And Ryan was able to work it out and not disqualify that stupid person. So there was just
so fucking great. If you got disqualified from GenCon on your bachelor party, I would have given Ryan
putting Rose Gardens. It's not like it's a card that matters. Rose Gardens. It's not like Renly's or something or Maces were missing. Anyway,
Rose Garden actually does matter quite a bit. When we were flipping cards from the deck for shots at the Tiki Bar, I happened to flip a Rose Garden one unfortunate time, and it cost me about $30. So I'm not a fan of Rose Garden. I wish they'd been cut.
Okay. Well, besides that, and we'll talk more about the partying later, but we should probably talk a little bit about the meta first. But I want to get out of the way. Congratulations, Tyler. Congratulations, Scott. And congratulations, Ryan, for a really lovely weekend. But the number one story, I think, coming out of Gen Con this year was Wars Have Come hard all over the place. It was, Ala just yelled gross.
Yeah. We are not doing crazy on the show anymore.
She says she's going to burn my Long Lances shirt now. Anyway.
Yeah, she really hates that one, huh?
She does. Anyway, the Wars to Come is here to stay, it seems like. It was, close to 50% of the field? We've got the numbers right here.
It was over 50% of the field.
50 out of 91?
50 out of 91. So over 50% of the field.
Over 60%, no? Am I saying my math wrong?
How many were there?
55.
50 out of 91.
60.4.
Oh, you.
0.4.
I'm the best English teacher at math on this.
You're definitely the best English teacher at math.
True statement.
Speaking of math teachers, I got a text from John Bruno today about this very subject, and he said, was it really that prevalent? I told him the math, and he said, that's incredible. And I asked if it had ever happened with any agenda before, and he's played all 3 editions, and he said this is unprecedented, completely has never happened to this level.
With that said, it was lower than I expected. I expected way more than that. The fact that I went 2 matches and I only saw one of them was a shock.
That is below the average, actually. That was against the odds.
I only played one non-Wars deck that day, and that was my first round opponent who wanted to just play one round and drop because they just wanted the promos. So
Was that Malucci?
No, it was not Malucci.
Was it Brady?
Malucci was just so demoralized he dropped. But yeah, so what do we think about this? Do we think that Don's agenda was overpushed? Is this a problem? Like, there was a huge thread about, is this a problem for the game in the Facebook group? What do we think? Vac, you are our guest. You're going to kick us off here.
Yeah, I think it's just hindering creativity, honestly. To put it flat out, people are falling into it because there's no drawback to it. It's a safety net. The fact that you don't have to build your plot deck inside the normal constraints, and you can just, which reset do I run? No, you can run 3 resets and still have plenty of room for all this other stuff. It just makes it a no-brainer, no matter what house you're running.
Yeah, I would agree. Unless you're just like, I'm going to rush, and I want to rush the fastest I can rush. Like, it is, as Vac said, like, it's pretty no-brainer right now. But I think it's no-brainer if you plan to play it as safe as possible, right? Like, if you're that kind of player that's like, I'm going to Gen Con, this is a big tournament, I'm going to play it safe. I want to go to day 2. I'm bringing something that I know is going to get me there. Like, it's probably going to be a Wars deck 60.4% of the time.
My deck, Tyrell Wars, that I was running, it started off as Tyrell Cohort. And then I was playing it. I'm like, this is fine, but 10 plots are just better. Simple as that. Instead of the on-demand answer to an issue I might need, the plots are more on-demand than that. I don't have to win a challenge. So I just have to wait for a next turn. And that was the deciding factor.
So that's an interesting and very specific point that I think is a pretty decent comparison, is when you look at something like Cohort, yeah, it gives you on-demand answers, but you still have to put those answers in your 60 cards. When you have on-demand answers that you don't have to put in your 60 cards, you can play nothing but a pile of good stuff in your 60 cards. Still have answers, still have situational answers, because you're rarely going to play all 10 of your plots. So you can afford some that are kind of narrow. There's so many examples, I don't even know where to start. But then you don't have to...
Political disaster. Start there.
Sure.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Someone might even want to run 2 confiscations in case they run into a bunch of Cohort decks.
Absolutely.
And builders.
So the fact that it lets you move all of that efficiency and all of those answers to the plot deck is just an incredible boon.
Yeah, and I think basically if you want to play anything but control, you want Wars to Come. Control still, I think, wants cards from other factions. I don't think there's enough control cards in any faction except Martell to run it mono and have it to the consistency and redundancy. And even Martell, I think, as Aaron knows, wants wolf cards to create redundancy of effects and control effects. And what Wars, I think, does, and this is what I was afraid of, actually, and I've said repeatedly in the show, it just homogenizes decks in a more mid-range direction. And particularly if you can come up with a mid-range game plan that's backed up by some kind of combo finisher, that you can then protect that combo finisher or accelerate it with your 10 plots. So basically Tyrell and Martell. You're going to have a really successful deck that's really powerful. And there's nothing really other factions can do about it because there's no like answer to Wars to come in the way in which there could be to Cahor, which I played against Cahor decks. We just don't let them win challenges or don't let them win Intrigue by 5. Like it's all upside. The closest all upside would be maybe like the summer agenda would have been the closest one to this. Like that's, but even that nominally has a drawback. You can't run winter plots.
It just doesn't.
No one does anymore, though.
It just
right. It doesn't have as high of a
ceiling.
ceiling.
An upside. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like the closest we have to it, right? And we definitely saw some decks like Tyrell Summer and Night's Watch Summer like abuse that even small marginal equity that you got from that, right? Because it didn't really have a drawback. So it's a problem. Not a problem in the game is going to collapse, but it's going to continually create balance issues unless it's addressed in some way.
So it's not like a small problem. It's a huge problem. Like, as a deck builder, anything mono house, like, it should probably just be Wars. And getting rid of anything that's not banner, and banners are like, they're great, as we can see by the number of banners that showed up, is a huge problem. Like, Cahor is amazing in that it lets you pull off things your opponent hasn't seen, and when they're not ready for it, it sort of owns their face. But, like, you can meta for Cahor. You can't, there's nothing you can do to meta for Wars, except, I don't know, play Crossing and Rush. But, like, as we saw, that's not really enough, because, like, if Rush becomes the answer, there's plots that stop Rush. Like, giving 10 plots says I can't answer anything on demand. Like, it's not a small problem. Like, this, like, 60% of the field isn't a small problem. 60% of the field is fucking absurd, and something has to be done. The card should have never been printed the way it was, and that it was just is going to like. There's no way that more plots don't just keep making this agenda better. Like, unless they create a bunch more busted-ass agendas, in which case, literally, we can ditch every agenda from the first 3 years of the game. Nothing helps. Nothing helps.
Well, we got Bloody Flux. Is it Bloody Flux? Or no, it's Sea of Blood, which was spoiled, which is also a power creep AF agenda.
Yeah.
So... And that's not even a champ design. So all those whiners about only champ design agendas are good. Well, Danny showed you. He can print busted ones all by himself, too.
Even that one has restrictions, though.
Like certain houses can just never play that one. Like Martell and Targ are never playing the Bloody Sea, right?
Targ Dothraki might play.
Targ Dothraki, but not your standard.
Stuff. And at that point you're ditching all your like Drax and stuff, and that seems like a thing Targ is getting in trouble doing. Like if you can only burn on military, that's a ridiculous downside for those decks. I think like as good as that agenda is, I'd rather just have the goddamn burn and run a different agenda. Like I don't know, Wars to come, because then there is no downside, right? Like I can run the burn. Like I think that's an amazing agenda. Don't get me wrong. It's just like I think the sheer pervasiveness of this pushes everything else into a niche build. And like niche builds, there should be a lot of different niche builds in the game that should make up the majority of the field, with a couple standard builds, not a million standard builds, and then like a few corner cases.
I will say there's an interesting little, I don't know, side note to that related to Targ. There were a good number of Targ Wars decks, but not a single one made it to day 2, right? It was the Targ HRDs that snuck into day 2, 2 of them. And Targ was pretty underrepresented for the amount of people. I think it was It was the second most represented faction at GenCon. And a lot of wars were in the tournament, but none made it. So I think it's not just that wars is everywhere; it's that it's really benefiting a few factions, and they're rising up there in a lot of ways because of war. Maybe it's partly because of their representation of tournaments is so high. Looking at you, Tyrell. But it's not like it's not rising all boats. It's rising about half the boats.
I mean, sure, maybe, but the best Greyjoy deck is Wars. The best Stark deck, or at least arguably the best deck, is
best
Wars.
Greyjoy Wars deck is still not as good as Martell or Night's
Sure,
Watch
but
or Tyrell Wars. Like it gets pushed down.
The cards that have the best cards have the best Wars deck, right? Like that's not like still porn stash. Best cards have the best.
Or the cards that work best in the mid range world. Yeah.
No, Greyjoy has amazing mid-range cards. It's just they're not.
But it lacks the combo finisher.
Yeah, but
Martell.
I don't.
Yeah,
Stark doesn't have that combo finisher. Stark is still.
Well, they have amazing action economy card called Wyman.
Right.
Yeah,
like, literally, like we have it's a science experiment. Like Wyman is a science experiment. We have the control group of what it was before Wyman, and then we have after Wyman. Yeah. Like it's one of the few times we can literally see.
Stark isn't as fast as the others, but it can shut down the others, which makes it competitive, right? Like that's why it can hang with all the others.
We've got some questions about this on the chat, according to Buzz. We could have taken this over
Buzz, what do you have to say why Aaron's looking up the questions on the chat?
I really do think Wars is overhyped in the see more core decks, but it's Europe also has a tendency to be form decks that are out there. NA safe. I think NA welcomes Wars a lot more. Like I think a lot of people like, oh shit, this goes really well into my regular decks.
Buzz, you're breaking up. Chat says you're breaking up.
Well, that's interesting. Boom.
Okay, well, why
Buzz fixed now? I think. Yeah, it should be fixed.
Yeah, you're good for us.
Yeah, Buzz has a really good point. But I mean, we do have to remember though that the largest European event so far of the year was won by what agenda?
Tyrell Wars, and it was 48% of the field. But this was before core though, so after core we have seen tons of alliance builds. We have seen about 25% core in the tournaments, I think, if you include alliance builds.
Does that just mean that Europeans like Florian better than Donovan? Is that what we're seeing?
No one likes Florian.
Except John.
On the other hand, we have not had a really big tournament yet. Fracas might be our next European meta temperature check, so to speak. So it might just be people sticking around with core. We don't know yet. But I think we will not see this kind of war influence on Fracas.
So I'll be our European representative there since Buzz can't be bothered to show up and let everyone know.
I'm excited to hear about Aaron's adventures at Fracas. Does anyone else have more to say about wars? Because I do want to talk about
a lot of wars questions. You can just
throw them in, Glazer. Let's talk.
Oh no, like listener questions. They'll come up later.
Okay, we'll come back to wars. I want to talk about, to me, the other big story, which is we'll get to it. But Aaron and I and Chris built together this year, and one of the things we were definitely expecting was Stark Cohor. And Cohor in general, but particularly probably the most solved Stark deck, or not Stark deck, excuse me, most solved Cohor deck going into the weekend, which was Stark Cohor, which one of the new DC guys, Bryn, won my tournament with it 2 weeks before GenCon, and then Wama a week before GenCon won, and they both published their lists. They were both like good lists. They're also not very complicated lists. These were not like learning to play combo. It was just Stark mid-range that could search out attachments. Nothing like... We expected a lot of it. It was good in our testing. We teched our Tyrell deck hard to beat it. And how much Stark Cohor was there? Like one? And
I beat it.
And Aaron beat it. Well, our decks did what they were supposed to do. Yeah, that was the biggest surprise. I was actually really disappointed in the American meta, actually, that there was so little cohort, particularly Star cohort. What do we think about that?
I think you must have been disappointed in yourself then, Roy.
No?
You must have been disappointed in yourself. Like, you guys all got cohort. Tyrell Wars, and you're like, where's all the Star cohort? You're like 12% of the field. Like, what do you mean, where are they? You guys took them out. They could have been there.
What?
I mean,
what? We mean we should have brought Star cohort, or did we bring a deck that we thought beat Star cohort? I guess
I think you kind of outthought it, right? Like,
yeah.
Star cohort is not the American deck, right? Tyrell Wars is the kind of American deck for a while now.
Its popularity was from a European tournament.
I've got a question. 2 European tournaments. But hey, Vac, as the non-long lens GenCon person here who brought Tyrell Wars, did you test against Star cohort, and how did your deck do against it?
I exclusively tested against Star cohort. I was confident in every other matchup. That was the new one that I 100% thought you guys were taking it. And I knew how many of you there were. So I was like, I need to practice this. I had James McKenna as my punching bag. Hey, you run this list. Let me know how to play this. My deck did really well against it. I was super comfortable going up against it. And when I woke up GenCon morning and heard everybody saying Tyrell Wars, I'm like, God damn it. I didn't want to play the mirror match all day. But, I did pretty good at that. So can't complain.
I mean, the other bad matchup's the one that knocked you out. We could not tech Tyrell Wars to beat Latin Classic.
I thought I would do better against that. I thought it was going to be a little too inconsistent. I just thought having piloted it itself, I know it can just whiff and just fall flat on its face. But
not under Tim Hansen.
Against Hansen crushed me. But against McKenzie in Swiss, it was really close. It was one of the better games I played. And, that came down right to the last turn, came down to initiative, essentially.
And I mean, I think that is really indicative of how that matchup specifically works, because I had the exact same experience. I got matched up against Jess Thompson, who was playing it, and said, well, I guess I'm dead. Managed to squeak by and beat her in also a very good game. And then immediately got matched up against Jim Hansen. The next round, it was just like, well, there's no chance I'm dodging it twice. Like, it's just not possible. Like, I'm curious, though, on the subject of Stark cohort, how much you think that this kind of puts the lie to the theory that, Americans are just lazy. If we're just all lazy net deckers, why didn't more people bring Stark cohort? Was it too mind-bogglingly complicated? Was it too recent to GenCon? What's the theory there?
I think I'll take that one. I don't know.
Blazer?
I have opinions.
So go ahead. I don't think it's laziness. I just think that that NA tends to like mid-range, and War to Scum is so good for mid-range. So finally NA, as I said before, like, oh wow, this is my agenda. And go ahead, play it.
Well,
sure, I wasn't saying
cohort deck is
you were
not
accusing us of laziness, but it happened a lot, like a bunch in the Facebook group. There was a ton of people that were like, "Oh, look at the lazy Americans!" Like,
I think Americans are lazy. I think a lot of what pushed people back into Tyrell Wars is that, like, there's multiple things that have fairly solid matches against Tyrell Wars, but Stark cohort specifically beats all of them. Well, if Tyrell doesn't tech for it, Stark cohort also beats that. So, like, if you could tech your Tyrell to beat Stark cohort, and everyone else has to run to Stark cohort in order to beat the other Tyrell, like, you end up with a stupid rock, paper, scissors thing, and, like, everyone just forgot to bring the scissors.
Also, there's builders just crush Stark cohort.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I
sure does. Dude, what was their other deck?
Like, I knew that was going to be floating around too, so it's like, just going to get crushed. So you can't even run. I never even considered running Stark cohort. I would have ran Stark Dragon. That would have been more fun.
Stark cohort, they can be builders, but they have to start like immediately and real fast and just like kind of lock down builders, which is not easy, but they can do it.
They can do it, and
it's not a one-sided matchup.
And spoiler alert, you have to the builder's player has to be ready for Cohort as well.
Right.
And so that's why you saw Chase, probably the best builders player in North America,
Scott
switched to
like a word.
And Scott, well, but Chase technically went further than Scott this year, but Scott's up there as well.
Scoops.
But
he lost to Dark Dodge with our deck is built set to beat him.
Anyway, I'm not trying to insult Scott here, because Scott's deck also came ready for Cohort. It was running Breaking Ties. Well, all right, like if you came ready for negative attachments as builders, so running 2 confiscations like Chase was, like you can beat Star Cohort. Like builders with 2 confiscations, just you won't, you're not going to have that many seized. Even with the search, you're just not going to be able to handle it. Like they just get that just gives the builders player just a lot of flexibility to get their walls off. You just have to be ready and test against it, and it's a pretty good matchup for builders. But if a builder just some builders player who's never played it before will probably lose 60 to 70% of the time. But once you've practiced it, you have a lot of outs.
You're going to lose a lot of games.
Yes.
Well,
builders could cruise into some matchups without a lot of practice and just be like, okay, you want to do challenges? Well, I've got the deck.
Yeah.
But not Star Cohort.
I think American deck builders are lazy. I think that there's fewer top deck builders in America than there are in Europe. There's fewer people who give a shit, and I honestly think it's time to start posting decks on Thursday. Like for everyone.
Could it be that it's just the US is more cohesive? So the US is culturally very, very diverse, usually, but in this community it feels like Europe is way more diverse because we have closely knit small communities in each country. There's like 40 countries, 40 different metas, and we all have our top builders coming out with all of these different builds. And we don't usually play each other outside of Road to Stalex. So I think that's a big part. So the whole American meta kind of plays together in some sense, but while the Europeans don't.
I mean, there's more players in Europe with a much smaller population than there are in America, partially because we're so spread out. It's harder to get everyone involved and keep everyone active and engaged. Like, that's the larger geographical problem of North America, right? Like, because, like, the same people have to travel to everything because we're the only ones willing to. We're like Poland, it'll be a majority Polish players, and then, like, 20 countries will be there, but, like, it'll be small groups from each, instead of, like, that's not everyone, right? Like, there's not, like, you don't go to Indiana and find, like, 30 Indiana players with 50 Indiana players that we then supplement.
Right.
I actually think Buzz's point is actually a pretty good one, and to combine actually Aaron and Buzz's point, because I think Thrones DB's influence on the American meta has been to homogenize it. Because when I started in first edition, like there was like a New York play style, right? That people like played a lot of Targ, all that kind of stuff. California had its own play style. Bruno ran 63 cards when he won his world championships, right? Ryan, the California guys hate melee. Right, and then there was the DC attitude of like, we're the ultimate team to end all teams. We're gonna play like Channel Fireball, right? We're gonna be like a Magic team in Game of Thrones. That's not really the case anymore. There's not really regional approaches anymore. There's sort of individual players and individual play groups, maybe, and those aren't. I mean, again, to go back to our experience. Like we had people from California, the Midwest, and the Northeast. Like there's a lot more of that. Like people will build all over the place in the United States, which creates some homogenization because you can go to a New York tournament and you'll have people who are building with New Englanders and Californians and Midwesterners, and they'll have their decks. And then you go to a Midwest tournament and you'll have an Aaron Glazer. You'll sit across from somebody from Chicago, but they'll have an Aaron Glazer deck because they're friends with Aaron. And just like you'll have a California deck because they're friends with Chris Schoenthal, or like there's all these different like cross-pollination that also the open deck sharing on Thrones DB does. And so that was very different than when I started in one point.
So can we make a united Second Sons plea to the community to just let Thrones DB be where you make your decks but not where you share them? Second Sons, do we agree?
I don't share them anyways.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't recall the
I
last
haven't
time
made
I
a good
posted
deck
the
in a
deck.
long time. Yeah.
I only
Yeah,
post
we're
decks
not
when I win something or plays well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it in. It's
Like,
like I
when it
think
comes
you're
to the
right
deck
though.
wheel, go ahead, Sid.
I was just gonna say that there's maybe something to be said about kind of Gen Con as like the American tournament, because there's no real Europeans there, at least not this year. And the build groups, from what I could tell, either you're kind of rolling solo or with a few people, or your build group kind of grab bagged from a lot of different places. And maybe that's why we saw kind of people finding common ground a lot more. I'll be very curious to see kind of the breakdown at Worlds and see if, cause I feel like at Worlds we go back to a little bit more regional, right? Like SoCal will kind of, close up their borders a little bit because we want to do well there and we're going to be there in larger numbers than at Gen Con.
You're not SoCal.
I was about to say SoCal
I'm in the
closes up
disputed
because it
territories.
wants to beat NorCal.
I'm not NorCal. I'm in between both. I trip, but I am closer to SoCal. But you're right. There will be kind of a little bit of a NorCal-SoCal rivalry at that point. Like you'll see those, I think, regional groups come back. You'll also have the European people coming over, so those kind of create little pockets. And it's going to be more diverse, I think. Maybe it's just Gen Con kind of has a naturally homogenizing kind of force behind it because there's maybe just less diversity in the way people prep and went to the tournament this year. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the numbers also, but I think we'll get to numbers a little bit later.
Swing Junkie is talking about this no team thing. Is this something we're going to talk later with Vac about?
Yes.
Yes.
We're
Yes,
gonna
we're
get
going to
to it.
talk about Vac in a second. We're almost getting there. So do we want to talk? So we've talked a lot about agendas, but we haven't really talked about factions. I mean, we've talked about Tyrell, but the factions.
There are factions?
There are. This was a very Tyrell and Night's Watch heavy field, which was, I think, interesting. What do people think about what factions showed up? We throw your way, Vac. What were you? Well, let's put this another way. What were you expecting going into the tournament, and how did that live up to what you experienced on the day?
One
that
second.
Might be another way.
Can you go through for us that aren't really updated, that weren't there? Can you go through the breakdown?
Yes. Let me just find which one of these two.
That's usually a Sid thing. Sid.
Yeah, I have it here. I'll break it down real quick. So Targaryen was 14% of the field. We'll start with Tyrell. I'll go in descending. So Tyrell was the biggest, 29% of the field. So that's a huge chunk, right? Targ was next at 14, right? Less than half of that. Then we had Martell come in at 12%, Greyjoy at 11%, alongside Lannister at 11%, Night's Watch and Stark at 10%, and then Barra, as we all predicted, 3% of the field. And I think that was no surprise with Barra. I was surprised that there was that much of a push towards Tyrell, but I think that's a direct result of some of the team stuff that we're going to get into. At least that high of a number.
Go ahead, Beck.
I didn't think Tyrell was going to be that big. I honestly picked them because I thought everyone had moved away from Tyrell, and they're just kind of like, oh, they did their thing in the regional season. Let me go and gravitate towards the next new thing. And I thought Tyrell was kind of played out for them. I thought I was going to take it and be like, hey, you guys forgot this was still around, and I'm going to get advantage of it. That was not the case at all. It was just, this is what people are comfortable with. This is what they know at the back of their hands. This is what they're going to stick to. And then,
I think
the other houses, like I'm shocked that the middle is so close between like Stark, Martell, like all of them within like 9 or 10 of each house. I thought that there would be like a top 3 and not necessarily a top 1.
Yeah, I think that was what stood out to me the most, was aside from the extreme Tyrell bump, that all the others were just right there together. I thought Stark would be up there too, like somebody, I think Tom McKenzie in chat mentioned that. But I think that there were a couple factions that stood out, and we'll get to that when we do our wrap up of the predictions, I imagine. And but I think that overall, I think that's a reasonably positive sign, maybe. That, people talk about faction imbalance but, they were all, aside from Baratheon, who obviously is a couple cards away from something really strong, people thought they had shots at it. And whether or not that was true maybe is a different story, but you don't take your second best deck to GenCon.
Well, some of us do.
Technically, our third best deck.
Maybe now you do, though, guys. GenCon has changed.
All right, let's move on to team play.
So we're killing talking about GenCon itself. Then?
Is there anything? There's so much more that's just going to come in questions. Is there anything else in GenCon you guys want to hit?
Just Stark's underrepresentation overall, but strong performance right up through the top 8 and to the finals was pretty indicative of maybe people just, I don't know, dropping the ball. Like, it's not just Stark War, like Stark Crossing, Stark Wars, Stark Cohort. Those are 3 really good decks, and I don't know. I can't really explain why there's more Greyjoy than Stark at GenCon. Like, I have no explanation for that. But there it is. It happened.
What about like the uneven performance of Lanny Crossing? Like, I
think they broke the deck with their changes.
You
I'm going to be
did?
completely honest. I hate their changes. Like, actively hate their changes.
Whose changes?
What were the changes?
Well,
yeah,
there were 5 Lanny Crossings, right? And 3 made the cut.
Did 3? Was it that many?
Yeah.
Was it 2?
Was it
I thought it was Hansen and
Mackenzie.
yeah.
Kevin
3
Hansen
made
also in
day
it.
2. There were 2.
Who was the
3 made
third?
day 2, and then all 3 made a top 16 also, though, right? So like they went through the cut
Wait,
pretty well.
who was the third that made it through?
Kevin Austin.
Oh, Kevin. That's right. Right. Okay, yeah. I forgot that Kevin was on the deck.
Four Thompsons.
Yeah. So really,
They took a hit
it
going
was
to
just
top
C.
8. Only one
I
made
just
it into the
particularly noticed it because just CT and Jess, who I think are 2 of the best players in North America, drew the short stick of variance for their team's deck. Because spoiler alert, Jess and Kevin and CT are on the same team, and to a lesser extent, Jim Henson. So
The deck did, what was the new spice that they added?
cut bodyguards, if I remember correctly.
They cut bodyguards.
So,
For
Yeah.
what?
They cut bodyguards and they changed a few plots, and I don't think they would change this. I mean, I'm sure they did, and they're all phenomenal, so I'm not saying they're dumb or anything. But I just felt like they were fixing something that didn't need to be fixed.
Sure.
yeah, I expected a lot more Lenny Crossing, and the fact that only the CT, the Indianapolis Canadian Northwest Alliance were the only people who really brought it. Not even just like random people, because it's a good deck that's easily available and has repeatedly shown that it's really good. There's performance both winning Kubla, but also just after Kubla. People are like, oh yeah, Atlantic Crossing's a good deck again. I'm going to bring it to things and do well. I was just surprised. Like, that was literally the die we rolled with our decision to bring Wars. We're like, hopefully people won't bring Atlantic Crossing. And we were mostly right. So, and we had a pretty good record against them today.
So, I think, like, even without Stark Cohort, where the hell was the Stark Wars?
That's what I'd love to know. That deck is so good. Like, and there's a few variations you can play out of it. So I can't believe it.
I get Stark Cohort. Like, I truly do. If you think people are meting it, yada yada. None of that hit Stark Wars, which has been dominating everything. And like, it just was absent. Like, that's what, like, did you just not want to bother trying? Like, I don't get it. Like, if you've been paying attention to the recent meta and like you're looking at a choice between the Stark Wars and like 80%, like anything but the Terrell Valeni Crossing and the Builders, I guess, and the new wall, I guess, because Wausau's Wausau. But like outside of that, like I'd love to hear why you didn't bring Stark Wars.
If I had gone, I would have played it.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. Like I played it at my
tried
last
to get up
regional. I'm on that deck. I like it. I don't know why. I don't know why
I've
people
got
are sleeping on it.
I tried to convince everyone to take it, like right until the end. I really love that deck.
I mean, it crushes Martel Crossing or Martel Wars. It crushes Lanny Crossing. It can beat Builders. Did that at the regional. Like,
that's
I mean, if you play it really smart, and if you play Breaking Ties in it, which you can easily, like it's got some plus plays, and it can.
Winterfell is a problem for Builders.
Yeah, like you can like Winterfell and Core Cat, you put them together, like you can funnel Builders down to just like that one challenge.
Yeah, also a big problem for Builders.
I usually beat Builders with it and test it.
So
a lot of it is just like that's where, if anywhere, our team went wrong. It's where our team went wrong. It's that we over-teched for Stark and sort of ignored Martel, because like Stark should have, in a sensible world, functionally chased Martel out of the meta.
Right.
Like, or at least made Martel change themselves in ways to beat Stark, which would then make them more
I think they did. Like there was only, Martel was in that mid range. I think 11 people came to Gen Con with Martel, and Martel is, I think, unanimously people think like that's a top tier deck, right? It's a T1 deck, and Stark like chased them away. The ghost of Stark chased him away. Stark didn't chase him away. And that just opened it up for other decks. Yeah.
All right. Anything else that we want to talk about Gen Con in general before we jump into our second main segment today?
I have one thing to say, I guess.
Sure.
North American Melee is dead, huh?
What was?
Yeah, I thought that was an easy.
How many people?
28.
28. I mean, it was a little awkward because a bunch of Melee people, like regulars for Melee, were playing in day 2, including Jesse Carpenter, the reigning champion. You could only get.
I called it. I knew he wasn't dropping.
No, he wasn't going to drop. There was only there was only some other people who would play. I signed up to come in the second round, and then got so tired from my hangover that I just went home and went to sleep instead. So it just, I don't think it worked as being on the day of the cut. And so if they're going to do it, they should put it on just its own separate day next year, like they did the year before, to give Thrones players like who don't have something to do, something to do. Like there's no Thrones to watch, no friends to hang, like no friends to cheer on, just like its own separate day. Because we actually had big attendance for Throne with no card design on the line Melee last year. And the year before that, there was but
there were also 60 more people in Joust last year, right?
There were. There were a lot more people in Joust, and that's something I think we'll get to when we get to our listeners' questions. But we need to jump into our main segment, which is spoiler alert for those of you who did not see the pictures on the Facebook group, or hear or listen to Aaron and myself and Chris talk earlier. The three of us, plus the usual suspects of Dark Naj and the Ottawa Boys and Scott Levine and some of our new friends, came as a 11-person team to Gen Con this past year, which is not the largest team in the history of Gen Con, but is the first time someone actually wore T-shirts to put us all on the same team. And this is, of course, something that I have done for every year that I've been to Gen Con and every year that I've gone to Worlds, and actually do all the time. I've always built with Aaron and John, and then later, before he took his sabbatical, Dan Struhall. We've always built as a team for all events. But Gen Con this year, we came in force, and we did very well. 7 of our 11 players were made day 2. 3 were in the top 16. 1 was in the top 8, and Jesse lost a really close game to break into the top 4.
Can I interject a question?
Two of those matchups, by the way, were teammates. Both in the first one in the first round and one in the second round of the cut.
I think we went over it. Every single team member we had, but one had at least one, and one lost to a teammate, and most had 2.
It was just natural when you're that percentage of the field.
You did say that you were not the largest team ever, but were you the largest percentage of a field ever? Prior Gen Cons are a lot, but you guys are about 12% of the field. So when you
DC
say
at
like
its
we're the biggest, I wonder percentage-wise if that's
DC
true.
at DC at a past Gen Con might have been as big as us. Well, at their heyday, when they could fit 2 or 3 melee tables with their members.
Right, but those were 200 plus person Gen Cons.
No, honest to goodness, in first
180.
edition, after it was the World Championship, when did Gen Con have 200 players?
Never.
The year I won.
Never. Ever.
Yeah.
That was
That
was in
in
second
first edition.
Talking about first edition.
In
That was
first
at their
edition,
high point.
never.
What
had-
were the first
never
edition?
had-
So between when it was Worlds and when it was second edition, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the numbers were comparatively small those years as well.
Yeah. So they had like 12 to 15 people that would play in their team. Or if they had probably about 9 people that were explicitly on their team and about a dozen people that Corey gave the decks to.
Affiliates.
Affiliates.
Yeah, you guys had a few non-official affiliates, right?
Yeah, we had a few
We'll talk about
non-official ones who were firmly
we had-
not official ones.
One was on purpose. One's just a schmuck.
So yeah, we had a good year this year. But the fact that it was so obvious, because of course we had shirts, it did make a little bit of a stink, as you can see. Chase is in there, stinking it up a little bit about it.
Lassaw's in there shit talking like, how did they start again?
Yeah, right. The DC
we brought-
second cousins are.
We
Yeah.
brought
Dissing Cousins
Chris
is
Vac
how
on
I-
today. Hold on, guys. We brought Chris Vac on today because Chris is, I think, probably one of the best largely solo builders and players in North America right now. Certainly in my region in North America, and has largely built his growing reputation by himself. So, Chris, what is your perspective on these issues?
First of all, thank you for having me, because I didn't want to just being you guys saying, yeah, aren't teams just great? Yeah, teams are great. Okay, end of segment. So I'm happy that you brought me on as the guy to defend solo building. So, the reason I do it myself is because I don't think deck building is cookie cutter. I don't think there is a right deck for a mass player base. I think that a deck needs to be tailored to the strengths of each player. Like, there are certain cards that I just wouldn't touch personally, but I know work very well. Like, biggest difference between your Tyrell Wars and my Tyrell Wars, I cut Hand's Judgment. I didn't like it. I thought it's really only in there to stop Doran's game, and I'm going to lose that exchange because they have 6 counter spells to my 3. So I was just like, it's clunky when I play it. It never works out. I like Nightmares better. I'm just running that instead.
Who ran both?
I couldn't. But either way, it's just like those small things really do matter at the end of the day, because I could probably pick up a list and learn it, but to build it myself and to make the one changes here and there is really when I get the most out of my decks. And really, like, if I'm doing that with 15 different people and 15 different opinions, it's a lot harder to listen to yourself in that case.
Yeah.
I mean, people made changes. Everyone didn't have the exact same deck. Like, it's much more visible in our builders, where we had 2 players and 1 outside player playing builders with 3 very separate builds. But even within the Tyrell, there were tweaks. Like,
Yeah,
I think
Sandy's seasoned woodcutter tech was especially impressive.
his very well thought out. Oh my God! I didn't pack the 3rd young builder. I need another card to put in tech that he
I
did.
thought it was Mr. Amon.
Was it a Mr. Amon? I can't remember. I just stopped listening to him when he told me he put a seasoned woodman in his deck, and then every time it entered play, he was like, "Look, Roy, it's in play." I'm like, "Stop, Sandy." This is the shit you can talk when Sandy chose to get drunk on his date instead of come on the show. But yeah, so my attitude towards this is this: I would not have gotten anywhere as a competitive player in this game without getting involved in team building, being with Dan Struhall, taking me under his wing, and then me building decks and being a play test and play partner with him, starting in 2015, late 2014 into 2015, into my first Gen Con that I made the top 16 in the last one, first edition. and it's just an amazing experience to do. And that's why I always push people to make their own teams of your local community. Because of that. I mean, because the thing is, it's not just that we try to find the deck, but there's this whole elaborate social process that, while is incredibly very frustrating, and my fiance can definitely attest to my various frustrations with the process, as can Aaron and Chris.
Stop looking at Glazer.
All of us throughout it. It can definitely be fraught, but it's an amazing social experience, and it gives you. We play a very variance-heavy game, particularly compared to other competitive card games, because we only play one match. And so when you go to a big tournament like GenCon, there's a good chance that something is going to go wrong, and that you may not get the record that you feel like you deserve.
Unless you're Chris Vac.
Unless you're Chris Vac
and the best player.
I mean, the best players, but even the best player, probably the best North American player still playing right now, Sam Bratz, did not have a particularly good GenCon. Good players can have bad days, but playing as part of a team means that if you are having a bad day, you can have something to look forward to, something to cheer. You can watch a piece of effort that you made rise beyond just your own capabilities. And I think particularly when I was, again, coming up, before I was capable of making cuts in a semi-consistent basis, like being able to say, oh, look, Dan is doing really well with the deck that I helped him create, was a huge thing for me, right? And Glazer's doing well. And, when it's just a huge social experience that I suggest to everybody. Now, it's really hard if your community doesn't really have like a tier 1 player necessarily to sort of mentor people up and guide them. But I think that a group of people who are consciously trying to bring each other's play up is something that I think is of great value.
Mentorship is the key there. When you're going into these group builds, I'm against it in like group builds in general. Mentorship is something that I definitely, I do that. Tom HK is a local player here, and some of you guys know him. I mean, he didn't even know anything about the game when he started playing, but I kind of took him under my wing, kind of showing what he's doing, and now he's getting to the point where he's going to start making cuts himself, and he's come a long way through mentorship. Yeah. But even then, I wouldn't say that we build decks together. I help him build decks, sure, but even then, we still come to different decks. I know he is strong with Martel. That's his style, that's his flavor. If I give him a Targ deck, he's not going to know what to do. Over time, you can build that kind of put that in your repertoire, if you will.
That's kind of the idea.
You got to build with it. Exactly. Mentorship is where it goes. But I can't fathom when it's 15 people giving input into one deck. So I don't know how much of a percentage it actually is, because from the outside, and this could be completely off base, but I just assume it's 2 or 3 people of 15 building it, and the other 13 going, looks good, let me run it. Is that the case, or is that very far off from the truth?
No, it's not very, very far off. It's a process, right? It doesn't start with 2 decks. Let's just tweak these and make them good. It starts with a bunch of people throwing out decks and building ideas, and then we test it. We play it against what we expect the meta is going to be, and we try not to smash them against our own decks too much because it doesn't give us the best data. And then we keep track of the data, and we discuss, and we eliminate, we discuss, and eliminate. And by the end, the final tweaks are usually done by a fairly small group. Because, spoiler, some of us, the 6 in the group who've been playing for 10 years, and Jesse, who's a maniac with this game, are really, really good at tweaking, right? We have experience, and we have sort of a gut this card versus that card thing where we can suggest that. And then even last minute, your creative player will be that's not my card, that's not my play, and they'll change it, right? It's.
And the other thing is those end tweaks get made by the people who know the deck, that specific deck, the best. Early in our process, we were looking pretty seriously at a Greyjoy Dragon list, and as some of you may know, I've had some experience with Greyjoy decks this year. So if that had been where we'd settled, I expect I would have been one of the ones on the front line of that discussion, trying to tweak that, and I definitely was when it was still in contention, trying to figure out the little pieces here and there, and so we had people that had played Tyrell Wars the most discussing it, and so people bring different angles and different experiences to the table, and that's what sort of makes the soup cook, if you will.
Like, a lot of it is once we start narrowing down decks, we'll play people with the deck and explain how to play. We'll write up guides, Roy. We'll write up guides about how this deck should work, and in the process you become, or I know I have become, and stop me if I'm wrong, become a significantly better player, or at least a different player, from hearing all these different perspectives about how to go about things.
I'll say I'm probably in the middle. I've had both positive and negative team building experiences. I'm kind of fiercely independent in my building. I like building more than I like playing. So I'm constantly making decks. When I've been part of teams and they've all kind of settled on a deck, I've gone a different direction and just said, this isn't my thing. This isn't my style. I'm glad you guys all came to your conclusion, but I'm going to play my way. And sometimes that's worked out great, and I've actually done better than the quote unquote team. And sometimes, I don't, because that's the way the cookie crumbles, right? But I do agree with Vac that I think not every team, and I can't speak to the Long Lances because I'm not a member, but I don't know if they believe in the deck, but I know some teams talk about the deck that Vaccaro kind of brought up, and I also don't believe there is the deck, right? The deck that will just fast track you to the top 8 and the top 4 and the finals, and the team's going to win because we found the deck. I just don't think it's that simple. And when a build group, when their goal is to find the deck, I don't think that's necessarily going to create as much success as, like what Vaccaro said, kind of having the flexibility for a deck that can play to people's strengths, and if the deck really isn't playing to their strengths, for them to be like, I'm going to play this other deck that either I came up with or that the group discarded earlier because I think I'll be more successful with it. I've had that experience. I've seen other people have that experience. I don't know if Mr. Spec is still in the chat, but I'm going to call out Mr. Spec. He is the consummate zigger to everyone else's zag, and I love it about him. Everyone will be on the deck, and he'll be like, nah, I'll play mine. And sometimes it works for him, and sometimes it doesn't. And I think I really do think it's individual. A lot of it's individual.
I think so. For our process, we want to find the deck, because if you find the deck, like Jake Platt just mentioned, like Combo was for a certain period of time, and you are the group of people who are on the deck, you will win. One of you will win the tournament. And that's the goal. But in the 4 years that we've been doing it, we've never found the capital deck. And we found usually a pair of really strong decks. And people bring the very strong deck that they have the most reps with, that they feel the most comfortable with. That's what we did this year, where majority of the team is on Tyrell, because we made a case that we do think that this is the best deck, but Builders is also excellent and has these good matchups. And a minority took Builders.
It was my opinion that Builders was a better deck. Just this is obviously very known in group. These are hot debates. These aren't things where no one's voice is heard. There's people that were still at the end fighting for Terrell Cohor. Hi, Sean. It's not a simple it's a social process, right? If you want to just build a deck and go to a tournament, feel free. No one's ever going to stop you. You can win, right, Vac? Cool. Some of us won't.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
Neither is the whole process, right? But we're not doing it to make it easier. We're doing it because we enjoy each other's company and we enjoy a process. And because, hey, if shit does go wrong, I don't want to have spent $500 or however much stupid GenCon costs to go there and sit there and be sad because I built a deck alone set, and now I have to just go lose a bunch of games and go sing karaoke and cry. I still had Mr. Carpenter to look forward to, and Mr. Rogers, and now this is cool, instead of this being well, I spent all that money and now I had to try and test alone. I had to test with a bunch of strangers. I don't really have a group, and like, or am I test like if I found this really cool idea, is like, am I just sharing it with the world? Like, which, you know, by the way, if you're on a podcast, it happens more than you can think. Like I get stories all the time. Someone like, oh, I put this card in my deck because I played blah blah from Second Sons online, and I'm like, cool, that's always great, right? But like, these are real things. These are real concerns, and like, even if you don't have to build a group, and you don't, like, it's really cool and really fun to just get together with your friends for like 2 months and bullshit about decks.
Yeah, I think our ultimate result kind of skewed the data a little bit, thinking that, you know, we must have thought we broke it with Tyrell Wars. That's not the case at all. The entire time through the process, it was very important to all of us. We had at least 2 possible decks, and at the end, people gravitated toward one, but that certainly isn't guaranteed. Like, I was on builders for a good amount of the process, and you know, I'm not exactly a fan of the wall deck, but I agreed with the assessment that it was very strong. Glazer kept trying to even push us, just play Landing Crossing, it's good. Just play Landing Crossing, it's good. So you know, it's certainly not a case of we found the deck, and there was no social pressure to play one deck. There may have been some pressure to, you know, stick to one of the couple that we discussed, because of the reasons that Roy brought up, that, you know, you're trying to punch through a meta, if you will, and somebody has to take the bad variants, like I did at GenCon. But in general, I don't think I felt like, I'm playing a deck I don't like, or I'm playing a deck that I don't think is good.
I want to go back to one thing, Glazer.
Hey, guys, time out. The Jesse campaign just passed the $1,000 mark.
Hey!
Nice.
That's awesome. Great work, everybody. Keep it up.
Yeah, let's keep it going. All right, go ahead.
Going back to one thing that Glazer said, that he builds with his group because he loves playing the game with these people. I love playing the game with you guys too, but I love competing against you. And when I'm on a team, I don't get that. It's a different kind of enjoyment. Like, at the end of the day, when you sit down at that table, it's just you and the person across from you. It's your teammates. They did all the prep for you, sure, but did all the prep with you, excuse me. But at the end of the day, it's you playing the cards. So sure. It's one-on-one gladiatorial combat. And
I'm not that competitive. Like, I'm just not.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say something about California. Like, when it comes to store championships, regionals, our community tournaments, Kubla, like, it is so competitive. You do not see there are no teams. Everyone's got like their eye on everyone else, and everyone's trying to outplay everyone. Like, that competition really gets to fervor levels here in California. But like at Worlds, there's this kind of sense. It's like, well, you know, it's us against the world. Like, we're going to come together much more. And players may play different decks, and there's the freedom to do that. But like, there's that cooperation, which I think is kind of natural for a large meta, for a strong meta. They're going to be like, hey, let's not go at each other's throats in terms of building and cooperating. And I think that balance is okay. Like, you come to California, like a store championship in California is no holds barred, insane competition. Everyone's trying to outthink everyone else. It's actually the most healthy metas that I've ever played in are like store championships in California. They're great. But I don't know. It's a different game when you get to these really big tournaments. And I think it's okay to give these kind of quote unquote teams a little bit of leeway. But it is kind of interesting the way we've seen teams become kind of these borderless groups, right? Like the Long Lances is really like a hodgepodge of players, right? And I think that's new. Like, that's pretty new. Yeah,
it's the internet, right? Like, it's a bunch of friends. Like, it's a bunch of friends, right? Like, it starts with me, Roy, John, Ottawa crew. And then, like, we're like, oh, man, we love talking to Jesse. And Jesse's like, we want to build. And we're like, yeah, Jesse. And then Jesse's like, I got a buddy. And, like, suddenly Matt Clemens is in. And, like Scott Levine is New York. And we're like, come on. Like, it's just, like, it definitely got too big and became unwieldy this time. Like, again, we've done this multiple times, and our group is usually about 7 or 8, which seems totally fine. Getting to 11 and then all the extra, like, friends we had hanging around the chat was a lot. But like it's people we wanted to be talking to about the game more than anything else. Like our Second Sons chat, where we're just like it's not always about the podcast, right? Half the time it's just us bullshitting about whatever is on our mind. The exact same thing, except like at the end of the day, we have a goal. But I guess we have a goal for this too, right? This bullshit.
And I would say I kind of want to speak to my involvement in the team, since I'm probably the furthest geographically afield from the group.
John,
It was that's fair. I mean, John lives in the literal North Pole nowadays. But to me, I didn't have anybody to even test with for Gen Con before they came in. California in the summer is basically a dead zone for Thrones. Nobody here really thinks about the game or talks studiously about it. It's kind of a break from the excitement of war, and then right into regional season, and then we gear up again towards Worlds, and I expect that'll be the case going forward this year as well. But
we'll miss you, buddy. We're gonna beat you, but we'll miss you.
Oh, it's on. But, going to Gen Con every year, it's basically been me talking to just one or two people and having the chance to really studiously attack the meta and discuss it on a daily basis and get feedback on ideas and provide my feedback on ideas was just an incredible experience for me, and I'm really grateful that I was added.
So, Buzz, your Team Sweden, how did you guys approach it?
Yeah, I've been thinking about how I should formulate. So last year we were 30 or 29, I think, for Stalek, which is very, very big. And unlike most of the other countries, like England, I think they field like 45, maybe 50 players, and Germany also more than us. But I don't think any of them builds together because in these numbers, because Team Sweden builds all of us builds together, all 30 people. But we show up with at least 10 decks because of what Vac has said.
30 of you. There's 30 of you. That's still okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's still like 3 people per deck, or more like on average. Most are maybe 5 or 6 per deck. It's 1 on one deck and 2, yeah, whatever. One thing we have identified, which is why we've gravitated towards this, from having a lot of the same people on the 1 or 2 decks, is because we've identified that people are way different. People have different playstyles and what they like. We don't really have house loyalists, but we have people like me who don't play certain houses. You will never catch me with a Greyjoy deck, for example. Last year we had quite many people on Greyjoy Reigns, the Nordic version with First Snow and stuff. But I couldn't play that, so I built other stuff. So I really think it's important, as Vac says, to identify what you want out of a deck, what kind of factions you would like, and then just go all in on that and build together with the people that select the same stuff. Now, I think the big upside, not only because it's so fun every year before Dalek, it's connect with all of the Swedish blah 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 blah. I think a more gameplay thing about it is that I'm a really bad deck builder usually, at least innovation wise. I can refine decks very well, but I don't get these ideas that maybe Sid shows me a good jumper deck and then I refine that, etc. For me, it's all about having the team help me out of my own ways. Like, I usually get hung up on certain stuff. I get hung up on certain cards or factions, and my team helps me to see the flaws, or at least challenge me, and I need to argue for my cause. So if I want to play this deck, I need to argue, like, okay, this is why, and then I realize, oh, maybe I'm wrong, or actually I'm right. The argument, the process is the benefit, not necessarily only this is fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just when you ever gonna do these team builds and anything like that, obviously it really only comes into play really these huge tournaments. That's really where you start seeing it flourish. Usually on the local level, it's not there because if you're getting a lot of new players coming to an event, you definitely don't want them to feel like it's their first day in a new high school. Like hey, this is the clique and you're not welcomed. We're gonna crush you. That's a very, very bad thing. Luckily, I don't think that really happens. So,
No.
But always needs to be said. Always mentor your local players because building up your local meta will make you a better player by the end of the day. Because crushing store championships all day with noobs doesn't make you a better player.
Having your new guy make the cut at Stalek his first year, and you being the one mentoring him, that feels so good. Talking from experience.
And that's definitely
every time Roy and Scott do well, I'm like, fucking A. After all these years.
Yeah. I mean, that's the feeling that in many ways you're chasing as part of a team. Is that feeling, right? And I actually take that feeling into Store Championship and regional seasons when Scott does well at a regional, when he won Star Pike. I was the only thing that could be more exciting for me would be if I had won that tournament, and it was an amazing experience, right? And I was so happy for Scott, same with him winning the melee. It reduces the variance of excitement, of both the variance of the card game itself. Your deck will have more reps, but it also reduces the variance of excitement where I did awesome this tournament. Oh my God, it's like being the biggest high in my world. Or, oh my God, I went 2-4 at GenCon. Yep. This is embarrassing. Oh God, I want to die. But if you're on a team, you'd be like, yeah, I went 2-4, but look at my deck. It's in the top 8. All that work, it paid off and it did something. And if you want, I feel like taking this approach makes it easier to take the game seriously and commit to it, because we can't make money doing this. In fact, you lose money being a serious Thrones player. It is not a money.
Serious, the more you lose.
The more serious, the more you lose. And I definitely get people who take the more libertarian approach of it's single-minded, it's that gladiatorial joust, all that should be they chase that individual achievement primarily. I get the appeal of that a lot, but for me, that isn't worth it. The high you get from that and the thrill you get from that isn't worth the benefits that you get from building with a team of people. And I will be making a video actually about this for Beyond the White Book, talking a little bit about how you can go about it, the benefits and stuff.
We have some questions about it that you're about to answer, Roy. So whenever you guys are ready.
I'm doing it.
I'd like to talk about one thing more on this topic first. So Swing Junkie talked way up in the chat about not being able to connect to a team or not knowing how to. I'd like to talk about tips and tricks on doing that. And the first time I went online to build, I had never played a card game before. Played Game of Thrones. I wanted to build a Targ Dragons deck because that's the box I bought. And I go online and there's this guy who posted from a regional winning deck and thought, oh, this is cool. I'm competitive. I want to play this. And I asked for tips and tricks, what changes he would make with this new pack that came out, blah, blah, blah. This was in 2013. The guy I messaged and started building with is Darknudge. And then I started to contact more people. Anytime I saw any cool deck that I really resonated with, not only a good deck, but something that I think I would enjoy playing, I poked and prod on Card Game DB or Agate Cards or whatever, started chatting and see if we could do evolve a deck or build a new deck together, etc. How do you guys have any how do you start your team?
So that's great, but one major note: Store Championship and regional season is the time to do that.
Sure, yeah,
Sure.
it can be quite secretive towards the worlds.
It's not like the world.
Right. And nationals and Gen Con. I think that's the number one point. Like early on in a competitive season, like Store Championships and regionals, that's a great time to start messaging your favorite podcast host if they can, or people in your community that you might admire who like won your regional. You'd be like, oh, this is really cool. You won this regional. This is an awesome deck. Could I talk to you about it sometimes? That's a great way to meet people, right? Which is like you went to this 30-person regional. This person won it with Targ Wars. After the event, go up to them and be like, great job. What was the deck? How did it work? And like the person just won the tournament. They're almost always, unless they have to run home to their kids, gonna want to brag about their deck and talk to you about it, right? Yeah. And then you become friends with them on Facebook. And then you have a deck. You message, be like, hey, you won this tournament. Take a look. I want to go to this Store Championship. I want to go to this regional and try to win it. What do you think about this deck? Most people will at least give you some BS response of like, oh, change 2 cards here, whatever. And that's one interaction that you can just build on.
I used to have in my Thrones DB just to count. Like I had like almost every. I have deleted them at this point, but like for the first 2 years of the game, year and a half of the game, like it was just different people's names for all my deck lists for things they send me. I didn't send back. So, like, one deck would be like Roy 1. One deck would be like Buzz 2. Like that. And that was just my first DB.
Yeah. Another thing I would definitely suggest, and this is definitely the case if you're in the Northeast of the United States and you come to a Next event, go to the after party. This is also particularly true if you're at Gen Con or Worlds. Go up to someone and be like, hey, is there an after party? And there almost always is. And the after party is a great way to meet good players and big players in a casual setting and get drunk and brag and then talk about these things. Like that's how I became good friends with Dark Naj because he would come to the after party. I didn't think John liked me for a long time. He was good friends with Aaron and Dan, but I didn't think he did. He liked me, but he's now one of my best friends. Like, and I made friends that way that aren't even on my team, but that are good friends, and I will talk to them about their decks. Through just coming to the after party. And one of the things that hooked me on Thrones as a community is this is a very welcoming community socially. Now, it can sometimes be awkward. You can message people and they don't get back to you about decks. But like on the day, the community is 80% welcoming. And I mean, you can just come. Gen Con's after party was one of my favorites of all time. We had people from all over the country there partying and celebrating, and people from various different teams. We had Wausau, we had independent contractors like Vac, we had the Long Lances, we had the Canadian Northwest indie people there. We just had like a variety of people talking about the game, singing songs, drinking too much, and
Roy?
Yeah, let's say make connections.
14:30 on Jesse's fundraiser. Almost at goal
right.
1.
14:30. If we can hit it by the end of Second Sons, that would be amazing.
I'll say when I kind of start to gather people with me that talk about decks and build together, it usually starts with seeing a deck, whether it did well in a tournament or whether it gets posted, and I think like, dang, I wish I built that deck. Like that deck, because that's like a sign that you might have a similar mindset about deck building, about the kind of choices they made, and then just like. If there's one thing I'll say about people who build decks, like they like to have their brains picked. Like they really do. I've never met a deck builder that was like, oh no, like my process is secret. Like no, like they want to talk to you about why they thought these interactions were cool, and they will share that information with you. And it's the scariest part is just sending that initial message and being like, hey, Dark Naj, I saw your deck at X event. I thought it was great. Or hey, Wama, like your newest spice is amazing. Like, what made you think to do that? And like those guys will answer. Like they will. I know from experience they will. Like they will. And they will enjoy the process.
That's how Sid got on this very podcast.
That's right.
He built a deck,
I promise you,
we're like, cool.
Wama will
super
talk
stupid deck,
endlessly
and
about
you guys were like, we gotta have this fool on. How did he win with this bullshit? Yeah. And we talked about how I did, and they were like, okay, this is fun. Like, and we realized that we had kind of, I don't know, a compatible mindset when it came to the game. So I mean, that's what you do. You gotta reach out though. That's the hard thing. I mean, it's tough. Everyone's got their own kind of social anxieties, but you do have to kind of, you gotta push through that kind of membrane of social anxiety sometimes, and just be like, hey, like take the risk, it'll pay off. I promise. This community is probably not like other communities you've experienced. If you have experienced kind of walls going up around deck building, like have a little courage. It's going to pay off. I promise.
And if you just
independent contractors like me will answer that message all the time. I have gotten messages in the past. I mean, Night's Watch Green site. Hey, can I have that deck list? I got like 8 messages. Like, absolutely. Here's the full list, and here's how I did it. Like, boom, no problem.
And if you get blown off by some jerk like Glazer, don't let it stop you.
Yeah.
Sometimes people get busy. Holy shit! Sorry.
I often get busy as well. I'm very bad about responding sometimes to people if they catch me at like while I'm working or in the middle of GenCon testing when I have 9 million messages in 5 different groups talking about the 5 same things.
Yeah. We have been saying that people love to answer, and they do, but you will run into like a cold shoulder. Like they are busy, or they won't answer for 2 months, or because it's stuck in the messenger app shit thing.
Where you messaged me during Comic-Con.
Yeah. That's with me during work. I'm like, something happens. I'm just never gonna think of it again.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't we have next Second Sons? Why don't we have Swing Junkie on, and we can talk to him about this?
Wait, who's Swing Junkie?
He's the main in the chat asking most of the questions.
All right. So can I also?
Let's see if he wants to do this. So you hear it. Let us know in the chat if you're okay with it, and let's move on.
So I want to say one final thing that's a bit of a Glazer tone level of advice here, but it's definitely something I've learned in this in most communities I've been a part of. Sometimes you just have to make it happen. Like if you want to be part of a team, it's not about convincing Glazer and I to put you on the Long Lances. It's you have to say you want a team, so you will find people, and that doesn't mean finding Aaron's or Chris Vacs or Buzzes. It could just be another person you've seen post in the Facebook group that isn't someone known that's on a podcast, and be like, hey, you said something insightful. Let's build together. Right. And that's just a person who is a nobody, not Thrones famous, not anything like that. And do it. Like it's the same with the Northeast Championship Tour. Like for years, people have been like, oh, I wish we had these fan run circuits, blah, 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 blah. Then eventually I was just like, no, I'm just going to do it. Like you just sometimes, if you think the community is missing something, and if you're missing something in your own play, just do it. Like just say.
So what we're saying, Roy, is you're becoming me slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely.
Spending way too
this is the
much time
problem.
with him, Roy.
Wait, it's tunnel vision. One of the problems with building as a team that I'll get into in my forthcoming video about this. But anyway, we should move on.
Though we've seen that in team play where the team is on the deck and then the lone wolf just like wrecks a team, and I kind of love those moments. They're great.
So, Roy, can you look at what's under number 2? And let us know if you'd like rather just handle that in your video, Matt Thornton's questions.
Yeah.
What else?
I'll talk about that in the video. Let's go into the more broad GenCon.
Then we can do the listener questions.
Okay, so some of these are not actually framed really as questions.
So hang on, just so you, I just cut words because I'm lazy. Matt Thornton, just so you know, if you're watching right now, Matt Thornton, Roy is going to make a video specifically that addresses your questions. He will keep them for them. Let's continue. Okay. So the first question is, what's up with the attendance decline? Says Fred Bird, and why is it down 50% since 2016? Says Andrew Kim. I asked the question, someone else has to answer.
There's no card design.
Sid just answered card design.
There's no card design, guys. Come on, like the stakes dropped. I mean, I've never been. So people are going. I think. I'm gonna make an assumption. You guys correct me. People are going now for the community. I mean, that's why you go to GenCon. It's for the community, right? I know some people are like the con. Maybe the other stuff like kind of pushes it over the edge as something they're going to pay money to go to. But it's a community tournament run by FFG, right? I mean, that's kind of what it is.
That provides a first round buy at Worlds and a hotel room and free entry to Worlds, which is not
all right.
And a flight if you're far enough away. You know, it's not a card design, but that's still.
But I mean,
non-negligible.
I think we can. Maybe not negligible, maybe almost negligible in terms of a decision maker for going. Like, come on, 90 people. Like,
and it's interesting because it knocked down the attendance, but it also knocked down the stakes of the tournament. Like Roy earlier mentioned that Sam Bratz went 2-4. if there had been a card design, I kind of doubt that Sam Bratz would have been playing Night's Watch Conclave. I mean, maybe he would. I'm not
except
going to
last year, he also didn't do particularly well, and there was a card design. So
Sam's a bad example. That guy, he marches to his own drummer for sure.
But at Worlds, he was of course top 16. We know Sam is of course capable of about anything. So
yeah, I hate that guy. All right, let's continue.
It's just a natural progression of the game. Like, I mean, in the gaming world, there's so many different options. A lot of people play Thrones, but when you're at Gen Con, there's so many things to do. You're not necessarily just going to do that. Like, there were 6 of my friends who all play Thrones in some form or another. Nah, I'm going to play L5R instead.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let the low number discourage you to the number of people who are actually playing the game in North America. It's just, this is Gen Con. I think it's just how it is.
I think a lot of people prioritize community events. Way better, usually, and way more plentiful.
Yeah.
If I could have done
said all this,
Thrones where I do.
I think we see a Worlds boost, though. I think the trend reverses at Worlds, and I think we see more people than last year.
I also think that's true, and I think it's because we'll probably be on a more desirable day this year since there's no more Netrunner. Secondly,
and it's your only stop. Like, if you want to design a card, man, and you haven't already achieved that goal, like, go to Worlds. That's it. Like, you got to go.
Also, I think this year we've had 2 years in a row where FFG OP at Gen Con has declined. Chris's year, it was fine, but not great. And then last year, it was a disaster of epic proportions on multiple levels, from judging to OP structure to just everything. They did basically everything wrong the year before, which I think did damage people's interest in coming to Gen Con. Because FFG screwed up L5R as well, the L5R launch tournaments as well. I think a lot of people going into it were skeptical of FFG's ability to run a tournament at Gen Con. So
just keep Ryan Ritter in charge, guys. I'm telling you, that's the solution.
I agree. Ryan did a good job.
That was the smartest decision. I didn't even know that was happening. Did anybody know that was happening before it was happening?
No, not really.
Jesse, I think.
He knew like a day or two before, but
I'm sure Ritter was like, "I'm not going to tell anybody. Like, I'm going cold because I don't want expectations." Like, which is smart on his part. And I mean, he is someone who, like, everyone trusts because he spent most of his time connected to Thrones, like, on our end, right? Like, he knows what it is to provide good prizes, to provide a smooth tournament. Like, that's great that he got the opportunity. I do wonder if he kind of like championed his own cause within the halls of FFG, or if they were like, "You want it, like, you take it," because no one else seems to be able to get this thing right.
I'm also curious, and I don't know if it was Ryan's decision or in just a general Fantasy Flight switching, because it also happened for Destiny, but the format was significantly improved this year from previous years.
I'm going to assume it was Ryan because it's a solid format, right?
Yeah, doing the solid format, like,
but
that's gotta
Destiny
be
used it too, is what I'm saying. So maybe they borrowed it wholesale. I don't know.
Did they? I didn't know Destiny did that. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, the X2 cut was perfect. It was awesome. And the numbers worked out great.
And even if the numbers don't work out, it's still the right decision. Like,
as a perpetual X2 player, I love it. That's where I live, guys. I live there.
Like, the initial cut at Gen Con, it kind of sucked that Tom McKenzie went 6-0 and wasn't getting a bye. But that's just kind of numbers.
I took care of it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so Glazer did the honorable thing and made sure that was taken care of. But those things are sometimes unavoidable. It's just, let players come up with a mathematical anomaly. They will make it happen, no matter how well your plan is.
All right, so jumping on to a second question, we'll only get through like 2 questions today.
Should we agitate for a card design for both Wama?
No, I was going to skip that one because
skip
it's not
you
that
just
super.
Say no.
We can't. It's not going to do anything. We tried agitating for Wama. Tyler, congratulations. Good job, but see you at Worlds.
Grats, get fucked.
Yeah. It's fun. One card
if they,
design.
if they wouldn't change policy for the largest tournament so far this year in Europe, they're not going to change the policy for a 90-person tournament in Indianapolis. So
if they don't want the tournament to be 90 again next year, though, they should strongly consider reinstating card designs.
I don't think they care about numbers at GenCon, right? Like, they're not making the bucks there. They're making them at Worlds. So, like,
it's just keeping the excitement going in the game.
there, I agree. Anyway,
I love the Jimmy Stewart question.
all right, this is Jimmy's question. What would the Gen Con agenda breakdown have looked like if Wars wasn't printed? Would it have changed the faction breakdown in any meaningful way? Phrase another way, how many Wars decks do you think have functioned roughly the same as any other agenda, and which ones wouldn't?
So it kills Martel, right? Or at least that type of Martel. I don't think I guess Martel Dragon can kind of do the same thing, but it's just so much less efficient that, like, I think that we definitely have a different winner. But I think
Martel Crossing can kind of focus on the game spike, but it's not consistent.
It doesn't have the burst power gain. I mean, what's the best Doran's game you can get out of that sort of deck? It's not nearly as big.
7 or 8,
Right.
but it's on the last turn.
Right.
You have to
The
do
agenda
it
is
right
helping
then.
you get get a little bit of it back, but not enough. That's why it's not as consistent.
I mean, the Knights
Tyrell Wars and Tyrell Cohort were 5-card difference, 3 of which were plots. So
Really?
yeah.
There you go.
So like that, in that case, that
Cohort and Crossing, that's what I think. Cohort and Crossing, right?
The Knights Wars stays the
Crossing
same.
would have been big. I agree.
I think
Range
more
will come back
banners,
a bit.
like one banner agenda made day 2. You got to think there'd be a few more people kind of mixing.
Glazer was the only banner agenda that made day 2.
Glazer was banner. The Wolf.
Martel Wolf.
No.
No, he didn't make day 2.
what's his name?
I'm not counting him.
There was a Tyrell.
Yes, he did.
Bolt did.
You made it.
There was
you
a
just didn't
Tyrell.
make it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
one Tyrell.
So two made it.
All right.
And they
okay.
were both the same banner, which is interesting.
I don't remember him playing on day 2.
I think
There's a certain
Martel.
plot that affects banner factions, and I think we all know what that is. And its creator is in the chat right now.
Trying to convince
we can
everybody that his plot's really underpowered, right? No, it's not that good.
Greyjoy Wars was Greyjoy Wars. No one cares, right? Target HRD, obviously. I think we
Maybe more HRD, like maybe some variety in HRD.
We'd see more,
would Reigns
more
come
attrition
back?
and control, right? I think.
Yeah, Greyjoy Reigns would be there for sure.
I don't-
That's
I
the
don't
best
think so.
build outside of
Darrell, it would top that one Greyjoy Wars that made the cut. But, like, I don't know if it affects the cut much, to be perfectly honest. I feel like Martel would sort of be dead in the meta right now. Still exists,
I think
but,
more
like,
people would have been pushed towards your build. As
That's not the same type of players. Don't play both. Like, hey Buzz, you play Martel Wolf? How many Martel Doran's game decks you running?
Aaron,
Mortality.
check your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think your internet is lagging behind. It's robotic. What was the question?
Do you
Martel
play
Wolf.
play a lot of Doran's game deck? No, Doran's game isn't the same kind of deck as Wolf. Like Martel players, Martel players don't want to play fucking Doran's game decks.
Yeah.
But they'd be playing Martel Wolf. Like I think that's still
I don't think so.
Mortal
Good
Wolf
enough.
I don't
would be
think so.
played. I think there would be a lot less King in the North without Wars. Some people have kings or don't have kings, and they have King in the North in their mid-range decks. Either way, because of Wars, they'd be a lot more tentative to slot it in, even if they have kings without Wars. And then the attrition style Mortal Wolf that has a lot of character triggers will be a lot more prominent, I think.
But I mean, I don't think it really affects Tyrell, which would a lot of these Tyrell Wars decks would just become Tyrell Summer decks or
Right.
Tyrell Cohort.
or HRD even.
Or Bitterbridge. Although Bitterbridge
Yeah.
decks are different than the Tyrell that showed up here a little bit. They're built along different principles, having played a lot of both over this last year. But yeah, so I think for Tyrell and Targaryen, it wouldn't have a gigantic effect, but it would have a big impact on Martell and Stark.
Stark gets worse without wars, definitely. Yeah.
I'm real happy that Crossing Deck did so well, even though I obviously don't know the players super well. But
oh yeah, man, Matthew Woodard. I walked that kid out of Vegas a couple weeks ago. Barely got him back to the hotel, and to see him just recover like that and go to the final table, I was.
What were you doing that you thought it would take him 2 weeks to recover?
I mean, Chris, if you had been in Vegas, you'd know. It was good men were dropping like flies. It was the D-Day of Thrones after parties, guys. Even Sandy's buzz was harsh. Like it was rough. It was rough.
Everyone acts like Sandy can drink so much. Like we all haven't seen him puke 50 times.
No. It wasn't that. It was like just the amount of like good men falling by the wayside was even like it was harsh in his mellow. Like he was like, this sucks. Like people cannot go forward. It was rough. And but Matthew Woodard, man, way to go. Like seriously.
All right,
all the way to the final table, Stark.
We are going to do one or two more of these questions, and then I am going to cut the episode.
One more. Pick the best one. Pick the best one.
But there's a million.
Save the rest. There's a lot of good questions.
There's a lot of good questions.
Episode.
Right. There's millions. We'll just do one.
Let's see. One that we didn't talk about yet.
We talked about functionally the refs. Sorry, Colin.
I know which one you can answer. Which Kim brother is better? I saw that question in there.
Oof.
The one that lives on the East Coast, Andrew.
East Coast, West Coast,
West Coast, of course. And I have a really good argument. He donated 5 times as much to Jesse's fund as his brother.
Got him.
Got him.
That's it.
Oh, got him.
Change the answer. Edward wins.
Rip Andrew.
Andrew, you're welcome to re-up your donation if you want to try and catch up.
I really like Buzz Hannon's question about wars.
Oh. We've
More
talked
wars?
about wars so much. Ask away, though, Glazer.
If we ask that wars question now, we won't have to talk about wars at all next episode.
There we go.
Exactly.
All right.
Because the 3 wars questions are the same. We basically hit all of them. We've got 2 war suggestions, one from John H. and one from Buzz Hannon. Buzz Hannon says, what should Wars Back have been, and why is it? At the beginning of the game, your opponent views your plot deck and removes 1 card from it. Or discard 1 card from your plot deck at random. I really like that first one.
I like the first one. The second one is just like too much variance in that second one. The first one I like though.
What was the first one?
At the
Your
beginning
opponent looks at your plot deck and then they decide to just take one out of the game. So you get 9 plots basically, and they're all known by your opponent.
Ugh. That's rough. Oh man.
Yeah.
But you still get 9 plots.
No.
Why isn't it just something that interacts with war plots? Like,
God forbid.
Yeah,
God forbid.
You may play.
There's not that many war plots.
I think
there weren't that many schemes when Avro printed.
Yeah. There may have been exactly 5 schemes when it was printed. And they're like, yes, we just hit the bar. Let's go for it.
10 plots, minimum 3 war.
X must be more. I think 4. Like step it up. It has to be 1 more than you would normally fit into a plot deck.
The reason I wouldn't want your opponent removes 1 is because it would incentivize them to print more resets, and I'm just damn tired of it.
I am not. I'm the opposite of tired of resets. We figured out how to get Mace to stay on a board through 80% of anything. We need more resets.
No, we just need less Mace. There's better ways to do that.
So basically, I think that it should have. I hate both of those suggestions a lot, and probably should have been something that interacts with war plots and then we could get a one that. What's the other major trait? I guess that's the final major trait, right?
I have a super
war
good idea,
scheme.
guys. Price 1 on all of your plots, maybe.
Oh man!
A little conquest action there. I like it.
Like half your plots must be war plots.
It's what it was in first edition, right? Defiance.
No, which was it? Was it Defiance?
Defiance.
Defiance.
That would be great. I'm for Defiance.
I loved Defiance First Edition, but of course I was mostly bad at First Edition. So
that tells you the strength of the First Edition agendas, that it came out near the end of the game and barely saw any play.
Price 1 on all of your plots was real rough, unless you played Rush, when then it was an advantage.
That was a bonus.
Steal it.
Anything else interesting? Let's talk quickly for Ben about HRD Marine.
it's good but not solved, so keep playing it until you figure out the appropriate way it should be played. Like, it's obviously a busted card. It came out right before GenCon, but it's a card that, like, Targ is mostly solved. Like, Targ Wars up to that point was mostly solved. So slotting in 3 cards that fundamentally change the way the deck should be played means that you're not going to have it ready for GenCon. So if you like the deck, keep testing it. Find the best way to play it. It's a really fucking broken card, and expect to see more of it as we move into the fall season.
Don't let Stark scare you away from
with it, right?
Yeah. Really.
That might be my biggest regret to our Gen Con prep, is that I didn't have time to sink more reps and more thoughts into Marine, because I think it is incredibly powerful, and I'm looking forward to messing around with it.
Well, I know he's in the chat, but I beat Alex Black as a random game on Thrones DB while he was playing HRD Marine, which means that his HRD Marine deck is not polished enough if Alex Black is losing to me in a random Iron Third game. So we're getting there, but we're not there yet.
We get our first Jesse goal, 1925.
Nice.
So I'm not sure the deck isn't better as just 3 times Marine and a Targ Wars, but that's a problem with Warriors when the moon is HRD. Other questions we can take quickly. New wall stuff. Who had new wall thoughts?
Good. New wall's good. It beats Tyrell.
It's rough against Rush.
Very rough against Rush.
It's so rough against jumpers. I hate it. Oh.
Make sure you have another win condition.
Makes me so sad.
Yeah, sure.
That's true, because if you're playing against junk, you're stealing junk. So.
Hey, Buzz,
Builders is a good answer to it.
Builders without Othel.
What did you say, Aaron?
Buzz, can you pronounce the name of the person who asked this question?
Pronounce who asked?
Andrej Kubis? It's in our...
Andrej Kubis.
Okay.
I'm not sure. He's Czech. He's one of my building buddies. Andrej,
so I don't like how variance heavy New Wall is, so I don't enjoy it in the game. But I don't like it because pillage exists. Much for the same reason I don't really like Euron. Like, if it's intrigue where you have to blow up the thing that you're taking, you have to march it. Fine, it's that you can get it from deck that really annoys me. That increases the variance. That, like,
so your opponent deck though.
It does beat the living piss out of Tyrell. So if you're going to a tournament and everyone's going to play Tyrell, just take New Wall and win. But it's more high variance.
It's the only deck I've played recently, and I played Nick Hansen's list and versions of it, and just build it as a regular recruit deck with 3x Queen's Crown, and slot the wall in as a secondary win condition rather than the focus of it.
Correct. Probably the best way. Yeah. It's very good against Tyrell, though. So you should, if you're worried about people bringing Tyrell, it's
pretty good against Stark. It's pretty good against Stark too. It's just not great against Martell
or Builders. It's kind of pathetically bad against Builders
or Dom decks if they ever come back.
The mirror is a fucking nightmare.
Yes, the mirror is a nightmare.
I can only imagine how awful the mirror is. I'm glad I never tried it.
Here's another question I like.
God, I have to go to bed.
I know, right? What are the group's perceptions about the speed of games now? Is Rush good stuff outpacing Control? Is the generally shorter character of lots of games, C3-ish wins, part of what's fueling the domination of WTC?
I think the speed of games is pretty good. But the problem, if I'm being honest, though, I think the speed of games is actually pretty polarized. There are a lot of really fast decks, and there are a lot of balls slow decks like builders, or some Martell decks that take the game like or New Wall, which just like take the game endlessly long. A lot of games went to time at GenCon. A lot of games went to time at Killing the Kings with the Philly Regional. But there are also games where people were done in 20 minutes. So like it was very polarized in that way. So while there is a lot of speed in the format, I do think that there's still a lot of slow degeneracy.
I think if it was a bit slower in general overall, so that the were to come decks are forced to reveal their 8th plot, 8th and 9th, that you might see in a control meta, then it would take them down a notch for sure, because they have 3 or 4 answer plots that aren't the best in every game, and if they're forced to reveal them more often, they might lose more games.
I was playing Builders, the Wars to Come version of Builders last night against a Greyjoy Dragon player, and I was trying to count up if I would get enough wall triggers before I had to confiscate my own Milk of the Poppy off his Asha. It was pretty bad.
I in the Vegas regional, I lost in the top 4, but like it went to time. But the only reason it went to time because my opponent, like their 10th plot was Valor, and they would have just destroyed all their power. But you know what? Like they can get there. Like they can get to 10 plots. Like they can get to 9 plots. Right? Like it's tough. It's tough with 10 plots to like just you can game it a little bit, right? Like with 10 plots, you can kind of game it, and I don't like that about Wars. Like the 7 plots means you're gonna get through those 7 if it's a long game for sure, and the game's just better.
All right,
I am lightning round. Yes,
no
lightning.
Yes,
what happened to one question? What are we doing? It's like 5 minutes.
Go to bed. We can save these.
Yeah,
we can save these for our next episode. Yeah. But
Laser, the content monster tonight. What's going on?
He's in a good mood. He went 4-2 and only lost to his teammates. He's in love with the game again.
No, he's not. No, he's not. Laser wants to.
He's about to go to Fracas. He's super in love with the game.
He's super in love with the game. Don't listen.
Smitten.
Actually, the more Glazer talks about a restricted list with a smile, is the more he loves the game. But anyway, I want to. There's a lot of things to go around here at the end of the episode. I want to thank everyone who contributed to Jesse's GoFundMe in just under 2 hours that we've been on this show. We have exceeded the first goal. So amazing awesome. Job, Thrones community. Thank you for your generosity. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue to raise money because remember, healthcare in America isn't cheap. Since we're at the end of the episode, I can also throw in, if you're looking for another thing to help Jesse, make sure you vote properly in the coming fall elections to make healthcare better for everyone in this country. Next, I want to thank Chris Vac for joining us today for a really great discussion.
Are we not going to announce that I beat your asses?
No, we're not.
Because no.
In our
mute him, boss. Mute him.
I wasn't a participant.
See you in 2 weeks, guys. Great episode. Ciao.